Now, because of the ongoing winterized weather that we have here, it's given us some extra time to detail out some parts on these motorcycles. And to be honest, it's a job that never ends. There's always something to polish, always something to clean, always something to do maintenance on. Now today I had two parts I wanted to do. I wanted to repolish that boot cover, that little frame protector, and take the brake lever off and polish that up. And do a couple little experiments with the Flitz that I haven't done yet. And if I get done early today, I'm going to try some Flitz on this titanium part, and if not, it'll be on the next video. Now this little side boot, this little boot protector. This has already been rough polished, but I wanted to see how Flitz is going to work on that. Now, the other thing, and there's some other bolts have to come apart here to get this brake lever off, but this brake lever has not been polished. So we have a part that's been polished, I call it rough polish, just on a buff and wheel, and a part that has to be polished. So before I even go any further, I want to see how much of this part is going to be visible, because that's where I'll spend the majority of the work, getting that, this top edge, and the top where your boot rests on it. Now the first part, and this is the one this is all full of scratches from the boot rubbing up against it. So this is one of the things, what I want to do, I want to make a little mount. I get a spare bolt I can put through here so I can hold this in a vise and polish this with Flitz. That's the first step I wanted to try. And this is going to give us a test of, this is what the part looks like when it comes from the factory. I polished it, but I think the Flitz is going to make it even nicer. So I have a spare bolt. That's going to allow us to bolt that into the vise and see how that's going to polish up. The easiest way to get the brake pedal off conveniently, even though you probably could do it by reaching around the back, really only one bolt holds it on. It's to pull this little part of the frame off. There's 3 bolts hold this side on. Make it a lot easier. And the good news is, like many of the bikes here, this one's relatively easy to work on. The way it comes apart, very predictable. I will be sure to polish. It's only 3 bolts hold this whole side on. We'll be sure to polish these up. Some of them are pretty rough. We've been riding in some salty roads. This whole side of the frame now comes off. There's a bolt in the back that takes the brake pedal off. And once you have the side cover off, you can see you can just pull this back. And there's the bolt that holds the brake pedal on. And the linkage is actually 2 little screws there. Once that comes off, we're ready to get out of the tundra. It is cold out here. Now once you have that, there's a spring and a spring that goes up into the stoplight switch. All that stuff will get cleaned up. So after this is all off and we have the springs and all the rusty bolts and everything, all the scratch parts, all the parts to polish, and you can see what kind of shape everything is in. And we put it back together. Of course, we'll put a little bit of wheel bearing grease on all the bearing surfaces. Everything will be clean, everything will be polished. So this is basically the kind of day where we're not exactly losing a great riding day, unless you have ice racing tires. So the first thing I like to look at, it's just the way I like to do these jobs. I like to lay it all out. I know what parts, and I start with the simple ones first and take these over to the wire wheel, clean up the hardware first. Now I know a lot of people would just put that part right back as if nothing happened. I won't. And it only takes a minute or so. Now remember, that part has had, let me cut that off, that part has had 9 years of riding around in salty weather. After a few seconds on the buffing wheel, that part is like brand new, maybe even a little better. Now all of the bolts, I like to do two things. I like to polish the heads, and I like to run them on the wire wheel, the fine wire wheel, get out all the old Loctite, because all these bolts get Loctited in. And it only takes a couple of seconds to do this. I did that nice little video on bolt restoration. Now it doesn't take long, and to me this is part of the job. And it's part I actually enjoy, because I know when I put this back together, this is going to go together like butter. Now, as long as we're doing this, we know this works great on plastic. I did some granite upstairs with it, but it really works good on metal. It really looks good on paint. And the more I use the product, the more I'm just finding things to do with it. But I'm not doing that silverware yet. Anyway, I want to just see if it'll leave a coat of beeswax. Now, I did find out two things that I think are significant. Number one, you don't want so much buildup on the pad that it splatters all over. That's number one. Number two, you don't want it to dry. So once you put that on, you want to get right in and polish it off. You don't want to let it sit for 5 minutes and go have coffee. Now, there's a thing worth mentioning. Flitz is 6,000 grit. So it's only going to impart a shine on something that's nice and smooth. It's not going to be probably good on something that's like sandpaper. You want to use rougher stuff. But on this, now what I found, and by doing a lot of plastic and a lot of metal with the Flitz, and not by using too much material, the ball does the work. And the more patient you are, what's nice is, I mean, here's a part you just can hold in your hand. As long as you don't catch the ball on the edge. Even when you think there's no more Flitz on the buffing ball, there's still some on there. And you can run the drill slow. And where this is really to your advantage is when you're not, obviously when you don't have the motorcycle taken apart, when it's still in one piece. Now the Flitz, the 6,000 grit, really does leave us an unbelievably nice shine. Wow. But the whole secret to this whole system is that buffing ball, that orange buffing ball, and I've reviewed that on my channel already. Boy, that is the best tool when you want something to shine. Now, if you look at this part close, it's got a lot of scratches, and that's what I'm looking to see if... Now, what's probably going to happen, the Flitz is not going to take these out instantly. It's going to take a little bit of time, but I just want to see. Because remember, Flitz is 6,000 grit. But if you spend the time and take the time with that buffing ball, and that's why I put this little piece on there, what I think is going to happen is it's going to be really, really highly polished. It's probably going to come out so good that I got to go take the other one off the bike to match it. Now, I'm not sure, the only part of this I'm not sure of is how much of that scratch, if any, I can get out with the Flitz. And if I can't, if it's a really deep scratch, I know I got to run it on the buffing wheel. Again, having it in a vise, that's what's going to work real well for this. Now I'm just looking at this to see what parts of this are going to be. This is the part we see, so we want to concentrate on that and this top edge. Back here we just want to clean it up. I figured this would be a good test for our, and I'm always trying to use different materials, and I try to keep each day different, not do the same thing over and over again. I want to see if this is going to work on that factory paint. Sometime it does, and sometime it doesn't. You never really know. So to give this Jasco a test, I poured some paint remover right over that. I'm going to let it sit, go have a cup of coffee. I have a feeling we're going to wire wheel these down. See, a lot of these factory finishes, that they're not the kind of paint like, they're paints that get oven baked or epoxy based or whatever. But one thing always works is the wire wheel. So here's what I've learned, and here's what I can pass on. The paint remover after a cup of coffee, it's taking the gray paint off, but what's underneath it is not paint. I think what they did, they plated this with some kind of, it looks like black plating, probably an anti-rust plating. I don't know what it really entails, but this will get the gray off, but we're still going to have to go over to the wire wheel to get the rest of it off. And by the way, I'm doing this without touching the part. You do not want to get this on your hands. I have the best gloves for this, if you're going to do it, is dishwasher gloves. Yeah, it's going to take the gray off, but not the black. Now, one thing always works is old school wire brush. Heavy wire brush first to get that material off. That basically got us down to bare metal. Now we have to start working that surface and getting scratches out, starting with our blue pad. Now, these are always the ones that seem to work the best. The blue, the rough ones, yeah, if you don't get all the paint off, these are fine, but once you get the paint off, these blue pads are the way to go. Now, these mandrels come in two sizes, and they're very inexpensive. Get them from Harbor Freight, and they work great for this. These are getting out the wire wheel scratches, and then from this point on, we just want to get scratches out, working into finer and finer grits. They have to do some of this by hand, but I don't know. Every piece of metal is just a little different. And each one, as it gets finer and finer, you have less and less of the scratches there to deal with. Now, because of the way this part played out, there's still some relatively deep scratches in it. I'm going to use some, and this is 600 wet or dry. This will get some of the, from the blue wheel out, and I'm going to concentrate my effort on this part that actually sticks out of the side of the, that little cover. Now, there's another little trick, and this is a really good one. These are these little soft nail files you buy in beauty supply places that allow you to get up in all of these little nooks and crannies and all that kind of stuff. But for right now, getting this sanded out, and it just takes time. This part of it is going to take some time. Because what I want to have is, let me show. I want to have the part that we're actually going to see here, I want that to be real nice. The part back here, just not that important, but this part, from here forward, we're going to see it in the top of the pedal. Now it's time to take it over to the buffing wheel. It's got most of the heavy scratches out. Time to get that and just see how long it's going to take before this comes up. The routine is typically black, rouge, red, and then white. Now we're actually at the second step, the red rouge. And little by little, it's starting to come up. I want to be right on the edge of slowing down the wheel, but not slowing it down. Right on that edge is when I'll get the most polish out of it. Kind of like a Dremel tool. And this part of it is going to consume probably a half an hour, 20 minutes. The 3 steps: black, red, and white. Now the last thing I want to see is if the Flitz is going to bring this up, but the main thing I want with the Flitz is the wax, the beeswax on everything. So I'll do, when I'm all done, I'll do it by hand also. Let's see how that's looking up close. Up close and personal. See, can we see our fingers in it? But the main thing here is the beeswax. Final beautiful shine, the beeswax. I must admit I like that a lot better than the original part. And all that's left here, we gotta do the reassembly. Should be a piece of cake. Well, this part of it's been very enjoyable. Now it's back out to the tundra for a little reassembly time and checking out the final product. Here's where that Harbor Freight, that little light, that LED comes in handy, because we got to reach behind here. It gets a little tricky hooking up the springs. That little light is a go everywhere light. And it's quite a trick from the inside here, getting all these springs lined up, getting the cotter pin in, getting the right tension on the brake. Glad those parts are not rusty anymore. Blue Loctite on all the bolts. These bolts hold that whole piece of the frame and brake linkage on. Boy, when it's all back together, oh, that's a good feeling. And now the best feeling of all, get out of the tundra, go have some hot coffee. And just one more of those little details that I enjoy adding to the motorcycles. And to be honest, no matter what type of motorcycling you enjoy, old ones, new ones, dirt bikes, super sport bikes, whatever, I enjoy having them clean. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and of course, thanks for watching.